Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Prisca Benson. Prisca is a nurse as well as the CEO and founder of Our Green Life. In this episode, we'll be discussing Prisca's insights on how we change the way we think about money and our money story. Prisca, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah, excited for this conversation. So to start out, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
So I graduated from nursing school in 2011, and it was a great time because I made more money than both my parents combined. And I thought that was a solution to my money problems. And in terms of money problems, growing up, first generation Haitian-American, my parents didn't have a lot of money. It was always like, we can't afford this, we can't afford this, but they did do the best of what they had. So this was like new for me, right? To have access to all these funds now. And so what I did with those funds was I bought a car, a brand new car. And then when I got it when I went for maintenance a few months later, I replaced it with another one because I was like, oh, I like the car that they gave me that they loaned me. And then I also ran up all my credit cards. I was doing that in college anyway, but it didn't get better after I started making income, because that's just the way I got accustomed to living, is just keeping just enough money on my cards to spend on it and then pay it down again. And then even like with my first 401k, 403b actually in healthcare, when I left that job, I just cashed it out. I was like, what use is this? Like, it wasn't that much. I was like, whatever. Now I know the difference, right? But in all that time, I wasn't like necessarily stressed out about money. I was just nicely oblivious, nice and ignorant about it. And it was just kind of the norm, because that's how a lot of people around me lived, is, with debt. Like, that was just the norm. And I got married 2 years later, and my husband didn't have debt, and I saw what he could do with his money. I was like, what a concept. Like a different way of doing things, like being able to actually save some dollars. So we started living a little bit more intentionally. We started talking about kind of like how we want to spend money, kind of like having our own money principles as a couple. And then still though, after time, I would say like 5 years later, I'm like, I still don't feel like my net worth looks like what people would imagine when they think of a Northeast nurse. Like, people always assume you're rich. I'm like, my bank account, nothing shows that I'm rich. So I started listening to personal finance podcasts to kind of get the missing piece. And I started learning more about investing intentionally, not just doing the bare minimum or doing it willy-nilly. How to do it intentionally, being more mindful in terms of like optimizing my dollars today. And then that led from my investment accounts being worth about $40,000 in 2018 to $378,000 today. And it's just a market difference just having that knowledge and applying it. So that's why I became a money coach, because in my journey, I realized that I wasn't the only person that didn't know this. Like, I was looking all around and people were making like what seemed to me now like minute things, like, how do you not know this? Because I know it now. It's like, oh. And so I'm like, okay, people need to be like, we need to create a plan for people to help them realize that this is not so challenging. This is not so difficult. Like, I know everybody's situation is not the same, but for most people, like, taking control of your money is the most freeing and peaceful thing you could do for yourself. And that's my spiel.
Well, I love it. And, there's a couple of things that, would be great to talk about. I mean, one is your journey, as a higher income earner than your parents, is because some of us do have the privilege of growing up where our parents have had a comfortable life. But, what was it like for you? Do you think that was part of maybe not an obstacle, that's not the right word, but a challenge for you is being the
Yeah,
first one to win.
yes, because I people didn't have the knowledge that I have now in order to teach me to do it, right? So more or less, even though of course they like the way an immigrant when it comes to this country has to manage money is completely different than someone who lives here and grew up here. And so they know how to hustle. They know how to do these things, but I didn't need to hustle, right? So like I can work three jobs. Like I've learned how to do that with my upbringing, but I don't need to. I need to manage what I have. And so like that's
Hmm.
a completely different mindset to like learn and you have to do it on your own because that's just not how they did it. You just have to go find the people who do it and like learn from them.
So I have a question for you, and I've had it on other first generation or second generation people on the show. Is, is there a cultural struggle or something that people need to say to themselves is like, hey, it's okay for me to look at this differently than my parents because there is a tension there sometimes?
It can. Fortunately, I've always been a little rebellious, so it didn't affect me as much as I think it would for a lot of people. Um, when you have more, people expect you to do more, but you will never have more if you keep doing the more, you know?
Okay.
So, there was a lot of like people like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not how I'm going to spend my money. It's challenging at first. Um, the guilt from being someone who now has the capacity that you technically could do more, but it would be to your detriment long term financially. Like you will never get ahead if you do all the things. And that doesn't mean you don't want to be generous, but it's being intentional. So like I think about now that I'm this far ahead in life, and I'm like, I could take my mom out to dinner, like at whatever restaurant she wants, without thinking too much about it because I've made those no choices before, you know? And I can, but in the moment when it's happening to you back then, it's like, it feels like the worst feeling ever. And some families, like I said, because I am a little bit more rebellious and people don't really, like my family was just like, okay, she's doing her. Um, Between that and also the fact that, my family just, they eventually started to respect the limits, but some people don't have family that let up. So, it's important for you to establish that for yourself and like, put that stuff to the back burner. Go to therapy if you have to, but put whatever their feelings are on the back burner because you have to protect yourself before you could help anyone else.
I love that. Take care of yourself. And I think what you're saying there is setting your limits is
Mhm.
super important because it's easy to get run over, but it comes back to so much more than financial because nothing you said to me was like, well, you have to set aside 5% of your income for your family or anything like that. It's about dealing with these feelings and the emotions. You mentioned guilt. And I think that's oftentimes something that happens is I had on another guest who, he was in the NFL and he was talking about how people, the rookies get these huge contracts,
Mhm.
but they blow through them really quickly because they feel like they have to do all these things for their extended
Yes.
family. And
Mhm.
so it's like, that's something he talks about that he's a CFP now and he helps them, set their limits for, you're going to save most of your salary. Well, one, because an average NFL career is like a couple of
Yeah.
years, but, like for the same thing. I want to come back to one other thing you said because I think it's super important about you and your husband developing money principles as a couple. And I
Mhm.
think people oftentimes, money is like one of the leading causes of divorce is that they don't talk to their partner about money. How do you feel that benefited you and your husband as a couple having those money conversations?
Well, for one, we were doing stuff like now I feel like people are more conscious in general about money. But at the time, it was uncool to do some of the things that people are doing today. Like, for example, the biggest thing that sticks out to me, and I'm like, I still like, it's so like, still feel like a little scar from it is when people would be like, why don't you have cable? Like, why, like we were just first of all, I'm like, we don't watch enough TV to pay for cable. I'm like, and we had streaming services. So this is before cable cutting was cool, you know? So us having a shared vision in that regard about how we're going to spend our money meant it was kind of felt like us versus the world for a bit. And it's easier to do it together than for us to be battling one another as to what is acceptable to us or not. And so I think that lays just a great foundation so that even when things change, and things have changed financially between us over the years, we can still talk about it. You know, we can still make a plan together about it. We can still address it together versus it being a point of animosity all the time.
That's cool. And I think that's so important is because it just grows that animosity if you don't deal with it. And it's part of being a couple,
Yeah.
being a family. So it's so important to have that conversation. So, tell us a little bit about, what you're doing. What is Our Green Life? You and I did a bundle together, which was super cool.
Yes. So our green life was actually predicated on the idea that first of all, our is meant to be inclusive, meaning I don't believe that this is out of reach for anyone. I know everybody's journey is different, but our way of getting there is going to be different, but we could all get there. Green is because, green is associated with wealth, but also with health. And then life is just that this is, our way of living, right? And so initially this started out as a personal finance and health blog because I felt like and I still believe that health and wealth run very closely together. And also, I had friends who, like, I was geeking out over the money stuff, all the stuff I was learning, but they could not care less. So, in kind of like JL Collins' mindset, I created the blog so that when they were ready, like, it would be there. That information I was learning would be there instead of me having to like start from scratch with them. So that's how Our Green Life began. And then over time, I just started focusing more on the money aspect because I feel like it's a great through line. So like one, even when it comes to health, like I feel like people feels like a lot of that is out of reach because healthcare in America is fascinating. But like I'm like there are a lot of ways to save money on healthcare so that you don't have to worry about big mondo bills all the time, So how to access healthcare when you don't have a job or when you don't have the fund. Like those are the kind of things I like to address on my blog when I was posting stuff about like breast cancer, but also how to make a budget, how to save on car insurance, like all the things that I was learning, I really wanted to just put out there for people to have access to.
That's awesome. And sharing it is so important because I think, there's such a fragmented information system right now where people are getting things. So, the more ways of doing it, and you have a unique perspective that resonates with people. And so I would say to other people too, and, if you've watched or listened to the show, I've had guests from very diverse backgrounds on, is that you can find somebody who resonates with you, who writes in a way about money, who may speak your language, so to speak. So I don't know if that's the most elegant way to say it, but I hope you know where I'm going with that. So,
Yes.
one of the things you talk about is changing our money story. Is why do you feel it's important to change our money story?
I think the most critical barrier that most people reach is them telling themselves that they can't do something. And that could be for all sorts of reasons, whether it's because of your background, maybe someone's told you you can't do something. Maybe you haven't seen other people do the thing and that makes you feel like you can't do it. Or maybe you're just scared. You could be scared and that makes you feel like, no, I can't do this thing. But in taking action, that's where the results come from. Like you don't want to just know you should be budgeting. You don't want to just know you want to pay down debt. It's like, what do I do to get there? Right? Realistically. And I'm not a proponent of doing things in a way that feels begrudging. I'm very big on helping my clients find a path to their goal that fits them, that feels good for them, so that when they do implement their budget, they feel good about it. Like even when my client said she enjoys paying her bills, I was like, get out of town. Like, what? Because it's like, she's like, once it's done, she knows it's finished. And like she knows how much she has left to do the rest of her stuff, and it's like it's amazing. So get out of your own way when it comes to money. Like if you feel like financial freedom is not achievable for you ever, you will never achieve financial freedom.
I love that. And I just want to reiterate that it is achievable for everyone. It may look different for all of us, but I think that actually is what it's about, is that it is going to be different. Now, one of the things you talk about is that budgeting is the foundation. Why do you consider budgeting the foundation of financial freedom?
So people have different feelings when it comes to what a budget is, but the fact of the matter is a budget looks at what's coming in and what's coming out. Whether you have it or not, it exists. Okay. Whether you respect it or implement it or not, it exists. There is a limit to how much you're bringing in, right? Whatever the number is that's coming in is a hard number, and whatever's coming out is a hard number. The budget's just telling you what they are. And so for the people who don't, I don't necessarily prescribe to like budgeting, like, okay, well, for groceries, it's this. For the toilet tissue, I want this. That's not really my way of budgeting. And I'm not saying that to mock anyone. If people do want to be that particular, great. But for me, I more believe like we just need to know the core numbers, right? When you first start out, you do need to know line item by line item because we need to know what categories all these stuff are in because everybody thinks that they're hard up. There's not enough money to do the things. And then I look at their stuff and there's always money to do the things. It's because we're doing things mindlessly. So the budget helps us set intentions and then we go from there. So what I like to do with my clients is like create space in their budget. Like, okay, this is going to go towards saving. This is going to go towards investing. This is going to go towards spending. And the spending is on whatever you want. Okay. And then maybe you have something for housing. You can break it down whatever ways make sense for you. So my budget personally has like 4 categories. I have a client whose budget is 8 categories. Like it's whatever works for you. But without a system, right, that you can implement over and over again. And this is how I feel like, to me, it's like instrumental, is creating a system that you can apply over and over and over and over again. And when you could do that, that's when you see growth and that's when you see progress. And then, when we talk about in the financial independence space, it's like, oh, the first 100K is the hardest. I'm like, okay, once I started going past that, I kind of I stopped even thinking so much about money because I'm like, oh, it's just happening in the background. And you look again and it's like, whoa, you're almost at 400K. It's like, whoa, like when that happened? That's systems, baby. Like that's it. You just keep doing the things that have been working. And that's that. And you adjust accordingly if, across life changes.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that's true of anything because you've made it a habit. Once it's a system, you're repeating it, and it's always easier to repeat something than to do it the first time. And I
Yes.
love how you're reframing budgets because budgets are a scary word that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I think that there's lots of different ways to know it, but it's like you say, it's your resources and you have to know it.
Yes. And I think too, in the past, I don't even say in the past, I guess depending on who you listen to personal finance wise, there's still some negative feelings that come with budgeting. So there's some creators, it's like, you can't afford this thing. It's like, that's not how I function, Like maybe we can see about, first of all, let's actually look to see if we can afford the thing. It may mean sacrificing something else, right? But that doesn't mean you necessarily can't afford it. We have to look at your plan and see if this fits your plan. If you can't afford it today, does this really matter to you? If so, let's make a plan to do it. That's what your budget will help you to do. But the whole grr of like, you can't afford this, you shouldn't do this is, I think, part of what makes people averse to budgeting. And so much so that even some amazing creators, like they'll call it something different, like a spending plan. It's a budget. Like there's a limit to how much you could spend because there's a certain number that came in. So what are we going to do with what came in? That's what a budget means.
Yeah, and I like that. And I love, especially what you said, you can do some of these things. You don't have to deprive yourself. You may have to make choices and trade-offs.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you can afford everything, but doesn't mean that, you have to give up your daily coffee. That's okay, So That's awesome. So before we jump in, I had one other question, because we've talked a lot about confidence,
Hmm.
is how can people gain confidence with their money? Is because, I completely agree with you. These results are achievable for everyone. But how does somebody gain that confidence to say, hey, this is me too?
I think there's two things. One is to either just do the things, right? You're listening to this podcast. Hopefully, you've made some changes already that are conducive to what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe there's other content you're listening to too, or reading that do the things. There's nothing more confidence raising than seeing you accomplish the things you said you're going to accomplish. But by sitting on the sidelines, you'll never achieve that feeling. So that would be the first thing I think is number one. And then number two is you could borrow confidence from other people, right? So that is from maybe getting a money coach. Maybe that's from even watching other people share their money wins. And you're like, wow, look at what they were able to accomplish. I could accomplish it too. So I think those are the two main ways to get that confidence is to first just do the thing. That's the most effective. But if you need more support, there are plenty of people out there willing.
That's awesome. And confidence comes with repetition and having success. And like you
Mhm.
said, building a system is, it sounds like you also become more confident as things are running in the background and you see that your system is working and
Yes.
everything. So that's awesome. So, we'll switch into the get ready questions now. These are questions I ask all my guests in a little more rapid fire. The first question is, what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
Ooh, okay. Basic money concept I wish people knew is that a budget is fundamental. Okay, it is not a choice. Whether or not you we mentioned before, whether or not you how granular you want to get with it on a day to day, that's up to you. But you need to have some kind of plan of like, hey, this is how much I'm allowed to spend, this is how much I need to save, and that's that. It's not an option.
I love that. But I think what you said, the qualifier is super important for people is that it doesn't necessarily need to be a granular budget. And I know you
Hmm.
talked about that earlier, and I think that's something I just want to emphasize for people
Yes.
is keep it wide, keep, to your degree of comfort, you don't have to be an accountant and track every penny. Uh,
Yes. And I actually even want to add that one of my clients, her income, like she gets paid weekly, all her expenses fit under 1 week of income. So I'm like, you don't need a budget. Just don't spend more than one paycheck a month.
and
That's a
that's an easy
budget.
rule. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's an easy rule we can all, remember in that time when we're away from the house. Because I think the other thing too is people get caught up with is, they're all, can I go out to dinner tonight? I can't remember. What is my
Hmm.
budget for meals this month? Have I gone over my budget for dining out this month? Instead of just kind of having a general sense of how much money they can spend that month, you know.
Yep.
So that's awesome advice. So, what is one simple thing people can do each year to set themselves up for financial success?
Track how you did the last year. Are you any closer to your goals? Yes or no? Because that will tell you whether or not your systems need to be changed or updated. And that'll tell you whether or not, hey, I need to put more money towards this goal if I'm trying to achieve this goal by this time, which every goal should have a date attached to it, like what end date. Like if you have that and you see like you're falling behind, you're falling forward, then you can make the changes or tweaks in order to achieve that.
That's awesome. And I think what's important is you said, well, everything was important, but is see if you're making progress towards your goals. And are you making the progress that you expect to be making?
Mhm.
Because that's the other thing. It's pretty easy. And as you point out, I think something that's super important is goals need to be time bound.
Yes.
Is, you need to know when you want to accomplish the goal because an open-ended goal tends to be a slippery goal.
Hmm. And I think too, it makes it so that people get discouraged because like if you never gave yourself a timeline, your whole thing is I just want to get out of debt. And then you see like, hey, I'm still in debt a year later. But if you were never going to be with your plan, you were never going to pay off the debt in a year, that's what's going to happen, right? Versus if you say like, hey, this debt would be paid off in a year and a half, let's just say. When you check back in a year, you'll see that you're that much closer to it. You don't get discouraged by the fact that it's a year in and you haven't finished because that was never the plan. The plan was to do it in a year and a half. And then it's just a lot easier, better on the psyche because then people, like if they don't do that, they just get this, oh, I'm not making any headway. It's not getting any better. It's like, how are you tracking this? How are you making that judgment? If you never created that goal with that tangible number, this amount by this date, then it's easy to get sucked into the discouragement of it all.
That's awesome. That's great advice. All right, Prisca, the next question is, what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Make a plan for every paycheck, every single one of them. Okay. So when I have my budget set up, it's literally set up in my spreadsheet for each paycheck. This is what this goes to. This is what this goes to. This is what this goes to every single time. Don't just take and no windfall even. Like maybe you get a bonus at work. Maybe your tax return. Everything should have a plan set up before the thing comes. Right? So I have a separate budget for what I call bonus money, which is when I get bonuses at work. If I get my tax refund, whatever the case may be, it goes through that funnel. Have a plan for every single thing.
That is awesome. Have your system, as you talked about. So, what money myth are you trying to break?
That you need to be making six figures in order to build riches. It is very possible. I actually was wildly impressed by this one thread that I came across on Threads, where this man who was making, I think it was like $50,000, $60,000 a year, and the amount of money he had saved up for retirement, I think it was around $600,000, $700,000. This guy's working a menial job. I'm sure anybody would have looked at him and be like, nah, he can't do that. But you can. Okay. And if he could do it then, and we have he's I think he's of retirement age now. People my age, people who are working now, not just people my age, but people who are working now, we have so much at our fingertips with the internet. Like there's a lot of capabilities to see even if you could make more income elsewhere in your industry so that you don't have to feel like it's so hard to like save. But at the end of the day, it really is you. Like there's a lot of actions on you. Stop looking at external factors making you not accomplish your goals. They matter, but what matters most is what you do. So it doesn't matter how much you make. That doesn't define whether or not you will achieve financial freedom.
That's 100% true. And I've worked with some people who make an insane amount of money and they're still struggling with their budget. It's just, it's not an indicator of anything. I mean, granted, it's nicer to have more money than less money.
Oh, yeah. And it's easier if you do the things.
Exactly. And you follow that one basic, maybe we'll call it the Prisca budgeting rule, spend less than you earn.
Yep.
That's the whole key right there is, avoid lifestyle creep is, you get more money, you don't necessarily need to buy a new house and a new car. You can.
Oh, yes. Don't get me started, Tony.
Maybe I should do a whole episode on lifestyle creep.
Yes. Okay. I just want to say one little thing. I mean, I didn't want to. Okay. Like, for example, I'm a big fan of Ramit Sethi, right? And he'll have people on his podcast like, oh, I'm having a kid, so I need to get a new car. Why? Ask yourself why. Like, why is it that you have to have a house? If that's something you want, that's one thing. But there's some things that happen where a life change occurs. Like even for myself, right? I graduated from college. I went straight for a new car. It just felt like the thing that was supposed to happen. It shows that I've accomplished this goal. I went through nursing school, for God's sake. Okay. I freaking passed, even though it wasn't easy. There were tears. Okay. And so I made it this far. Of course I should have a car. That shows everybody that I made it. what does it really matter? Would it have mattered to me if I got in a car that was 5 years old and that was well maintained? Probably not. But it didn't even occur to me because that is what I was supposed to do. And that is like a twist on the head for you to like think actually about what you're doing versus like just doing the things you feel like you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, the perfect example for me that I always come back to is Warren Buffett. He lives in the
Mm,
same five-bedroom house he bought in 1958. And
nice.
that man can afford a bigger house than five bedrooms at this point. So,
He can afford a country.
yeah, he can afford a bigger country. So, but, it's like, and that's if you've ever listened to Warren Buffett, but that's what he talks about is exactly what you're saying is don't do what you think you have to do, do what you need to do. Think about what you're
Yeah.
doing. So that's awesome advice. So you and Warren Buffett, same sentence.
Love it.
Uh, yeah. So let's get out the time machine now. What advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
Okay, I want to preface this by saying I don't believe in regrets. Okay. I believe that everything's for a purpose, and had I not gone through what I've gone through, I probably wouldn't care enough to tell people about it today and show them that they could do it too. But had I had I known differently, I would have saved a lot more money. I probably would have been at financial freedom by now. So when I made my initial, actually, I could even dial further back than when I first made income. I think from when I first learned like debt, like passing the credit cards, like don't buy stuff that you don't need. Don't just go out to, I was going out to dinner and like spending money just because I had the card. I didn't have the money. I just had the card. And it was like a flex. Like for me to be able to like, hey, I got the credit card and I could swipe in this. I think that would be the one thing I would tell myself for sure. Like be a conscious spender. And I think the rest
I
would have
love
came.
that. Well, and you mentioned that earlier with the being intentional, is being conscious, being intentional. I think those things are super important. I went through my own challenges having a credit card when I was 20 years old, thinking like, oh man, this is all the money in the world.
Oh
You
yeah.
know? But yeah, not so much. So yeah, came back later, but but as you point out, you can't have regrets. That is part of what makes us who we are. And
Yes.
everybody has things that they wish they'd done differently, both with their money and both with the rest of their life. So, it's all
Hmm.
learning. So, what is your favorite go to money resource that you go to, whether it's a podcast, book, newsletter, app, or website that you'd recommend for someone else?
So my favorite right now is Ramit Sethi's podcast. Um,
Okay.
I think now it's called Love and Money or something of the sort, but it was initially I Will Teach You to Be Rich, but now he has a new book out, so he's, going in that direction. I just love in general his approach to money, where it's about enjoying it, okay, while building that dream future, and that's very much in alignment with what I believe. Um, his like I think for beginners, at least for me, Her Money by Jean Chatzky was on the money. I think that, this is a space, personal finance, that is dominated by men in general. No offense, Tony. But it's nice to see women like encouraging other women to do more than just take care of the house, to do more than just like let the man take care of the money. I don't need to know. Like, no, like we live longer, divorces happen, and you got kids. These are all reasons, hey, to be in the forefront of your money. So I thoroughly enjoy her podcast. Like it was essential in the beginning of my money journey. So Ramit Sethi is what
Awesome.
I listen to mostly now, but Jean Chatzky was the beginning of it all for me. So shout out to her if she ever listens to this.
Well, that's cool. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can count her as a listener, but I do subscribe to her newsletter and I love her weekly newsletter.
I love it
Uh,
too.
so it's a great newsletter. But I think you point out something that I think we should go back and emphasize, and people have heard this on the podcast before, is most women are going to end up in charge of their financial household they're either going to outlive their husband, they're going to end up, divorce. I mean, unfortunately, our country has a
Yeah.
really high level of divorces, but most likely outliving your husband. So if you're a woman, this is really important for you to start to understand about your money, why you have the opportunity to have these conversations and to
Yes.
learn. And for the male advisors who are listening to this and you keep wondering why you're losing female clients, this is why, is you need to talk to your female clients and the spouses of your clients as well. So enough said. People who've listened and watched have heard me say this before, and I'm glad that you reinforced that point, Prisca. Thank you. So
Yep.
to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Don't be a Debbie Downer.
Got-
There's just too many of it. Like everybody, one of the things you'll see a lot if you pay attention on social media is someone will say, I accomplished this thing. It's like, well, I can't do that. You never will. Okay? You can keep saying it. If you keep saying it, that's exactly what's going to happen. So rather than, even if you feel like you can't do it, congratulate that person. Just focus on that. They didn't say you could do it. They said they did it, right? But with every time that you tell yourself and continue to put the idea out there that this is not for everyone, you're not only denying yourself the opportunity to achieve it, but you're also influencing others in that direction as well. So if you feel like something doesn't resonate with you, it feels impossible for you, you may actually just want to follow that person, see what they're doing, ask questions, but don't tell them that either they're lying or that this is not for everyone and this is not achievable for most people. I'm like, bro, a lot of people are doing it. So figure out how they're doing it versus being a naysayer.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And you've given people some great tips on how to think about it and actionable steps on how to do it. And I think that's really important. There are some amazing people, out there in the finance, whether it's social media, blogging, newsletters, podcasts, whatever, putting out some great content. Listen, take the ideas you like, get rid of the ideas you don't like. You don't have to listen to all of it and put it all into effect. But, the principles are what's important. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that. So, Prisca, where can people find out more about you and Our Green Life and your newsletter, which I have subscribed to and I always enjoy? So, where can people
I like yours
sign up
too.
for themselves?
So you could sign up for my newsletter, usually through any social media where you find me on. So I am in a lot of the places, mainly on Instagram at Our Green Life NJ, like New Jersey. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name, Prisca Benson, if you want to follow me, connect with me there. And also I have a YouTube that I'm working on coming up. So it's also Our Green Life there, NJ, Our Green Life NJ there. And so I'm happy to find you and meet you anywhere those things are possible. And my website is also ourgreenlifenj.com if you were just going to go straight there and you could sign up for the newsletter there.
Yep. And another shout out for Prisca's newsletter. Go ahead and sign up. And there will be a link to all of Prisca's social media profiles and her website in the show notes. So you can, as always, go to the show notes to find those links. So, Prisca, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It was a blast.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. And as always, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.